All right. At this time, I'd love to get started. I'm so delighted that you're joining. Right now, you'll see I'm going to start sharing my screen. And at that point, you will see a PowerPoint. So the ECF is an independent lay-led organization. It was founded in 1949 by the then presiding Bishop Sherrill, who wanted there to be a specifically lay-led organization that works to support the Episcopal Church. Through our programs, ECF is helping to build a church through a number of different program areas, which we're going to talk about tonight. Now, one of the things that I think is very specific to the ethos of ECF is that our plan is to walk alongside with you. We believe that it's our job to not just create and engage in resource development, but to also look at the holistic journey, the entirety of a parish, and say, okay, what are the needs, and how can we walk along with you the entire way? So to that end, we created ECF First Step, which is an assessment tool. This came about 18 months ago, where in April of 2015, we started talking about how we work with parishes that have multiple needs, that might have a number of different areas of concern or challenge, and how do we prioritize what their first steps may be. And also, just as importantly, perhaps a parish isn't really sure where to start, but we could provide resources in a multiple number of areas and help them really determine what is their priority, where to begin. So ECF was created with this in mind. It is comprised of 4 different parts, which we will walk through today. And its purpose is first help parishes articulate challenges or needs, offer every parish a chance to connect with someone at ECF in their specific program area, share some basic information. Everyone who fills out the assessment tool will receive a follow-up email with a list of free online resources. And so these resources are provided to congregational links that are free webinars or ECF Vital Practices online, newsletters, or opportunities for additional consulting. And the assessment tool is a link that can be accessed either directly from our ECF homepage, which you will see right here, or you can hit taken here, and it'll lead you directly there, or you can hit printed and print off a PDF copy. What it is not. ECF First Step is not a diagnostic tool for organizational wellness. There are wonderful congregational assessment tools out there. And if you actually would like names of those, feel free to follow up with me after this webinar. I'm happy to provide you with ideas for those. This will not give you an assessment tool of how your parish is doing. Rather, what it will do is help you prioritize where is the area that you want to prioritize your resources, and how do we move forward together? So this is the welcome page of the ECF First Step tool. And what you will see here is that, oh, Nick, we're getting a little bit of reverberation. We might need to mute. Thank you so much. What you'll see here is that there are 4 sections. And this will be the first question that any participant is asked. Working with congregations, we often find areas of greatest challenge fall within 3 categories: strategic visioning and thinking, leadership, or financial resources. And we ask you, either individually or preferably with your leadership gathered, to walk through each of these definitions and determine which selection that you would like to make. And depending on your selection, then the tool then directs itself accordingly to ask you further questions. At any point while you're taking this assessment tool, you can always exit. You can always restart. You are not expected to complete it if you do not want. You can always exit. This is absolutely optional and yours to adapt as you need. So for the purposes of our next section, if one was to take the strategic visioning and thinking selection, then one would be directed to questions around strategic thinking. Now, I want to talk a bit about the strategic solutions area that it comprises the idea of strategic thinking. Now, strategic thinking is different from strategic planning. Some of the common problems, and I was just talking to a rector today who was frustrated because she had been in the midst of many strategic planning sessions. And many of the problems that come with traditional strategic planning is that they often are very time intensive. And they ask people, 9 to 18 months to devote their time to create goals. But oftentimes these goals, they're more than can actually reasonably be pursued. And so what happens is you create this really thick document full of goals, and because they can't all reasonably be pursued with the resources that you have at hand, then there becomes a sense of false dichotomy, and we tend to give up on particular areas, or perhaps even on the document altogether. And you put it on your shelf and you are very proud of the work that you did, and then maybe you pull it out 2 years later. Another problem with traditional strategic planning is oftentimes goals are mistaken for strategies. So for example, a goal might be that you want to increase the number, a goal might be that you would want to improve your choir. And instead of putting improve the quality of choir, oftentimes in a strategic plan you'll see someone put hire a choir director. And so that hiring of a choir director is a strategy, not necessarily a goal. Another common problem of strategic planning is that they expect the strategies to fit within rigid timelines, whereas we know with the church, there are many different variables at play. And finally, with strategic planning, traditionally, you're taking a snapshot for what could be 3 to 5 years down the road, and it's very difficult to determine what could potentially happen. And so without having some sort of adaptability, this becomes really rather rigid. Whereas strategic thinking is iterative and ongoing. With strategic thinking, what we do is we engage in a listening process. And at the end of that listening process, we identify core values that then inform a strategic filter. This strategic filter is used to evaluate long-term and short-term strategies in light of financial capacity and organization's uniqueness. This strategic filter can be used for every strategic decision, whether it be building usage, whether it be capital campaign projects, whether it be to engage in a new program area. And then from that strategic filter, we create 3 to 5 action goals that each year you go back to. It becomes an annual process as a vestry to refer back to these goals. This is really important because instead of it being something that's done once and then you revisit it every 5 years, it becomes something that becomes an active visioning for your vestry. You're constantly engaged in asking, what is God calling us to do? And are we utilizing the strategies that we have at hand to meet that goal? So, for example, here's another goal. Increase funding for our ministries over the next 10 years. Here are some potential strategies. You could have annual fundraising events, leverage buildings for rental income, start generating revenue through a small enterprise, or do a capital campaign. These are all strong strategies. Now, if you had that goal, what would be your criteria that your church would use to focus on the best idea? How would you make this important decision? And that's why the strategic filter that I was describing is about most important. This creates a common framework, a common language that your vestry and leadership can use for every decision. So here are some of the questions in our strategic thinking process that we use in a strategic filter. Does this support our mission and vision? Is this unique or does it duplicate others' work? Is it financially sustainable? Is this consistent with our identity? Do we have the internal capacity to begin and sustain this initiative? I've seen other questions as well included, but these are some of the basics. So with the strategic thinking process, then I'm switching out to the tool so you can see the tool for itself. You then have three specific deliverables. You have a listing process that ends in core values. You have a strategic filter. And then you have 3 to 5 actionable goals. This can absolutely, however, take place at the same time that you're considering a capital campaign or considering building up your planned giving. And so this is something that ECF would be very happy to work with you on. So now to give you a sense of how this tool would help you determine that, I'm going to walk through the tool. So if you were to identify strategic visioning and thinking as the priority, as I am now, then it'll come up with these following questions. And these are questions that you can be asking yourself this evening. You identified assistance with strategic visioning and thinking as your congregation's primary needs. And we ask you to describe more about that. On a scale of 1 to 5, does your church have a clearly articulated and widely embraced mission and vision statement? Now, you might ask me, what's the difference between a mission and a vision statement? A mission statement speaks to what is God calling you to be now. Who is it that you are working to be at this point? It's part of your identity. It's part of your parish's core values incorporated. The vision is a forecast. It's who you are working to be. It's the overall outcome. Does your church use this mission and vision statement as a guide for planning and decision making? Are there programs, activities, fundraisers that are beyond the scope of your mission? And this is where that strategic filter comes into play. Are there things that you're doing that don't link up to that core identity piece? For example, I was working with a parish that had a garage sale or a huge sale twice a year, and it really had nothing to do with their overall mission, but it was something that they had been doing for years and years. And so it became part of a very important discussion, which was, okay, if this is part of the core life of our parish, how does this fit in with our filter? Are there programs, activities, fundraisers in number 5 that are having a negative effect on your key volunteers? Maybe there's a level of burnout. Maybe there's some conflict that needs to be addressed. Is your congregation engaged in ministries designed to meet community needs? This is very important. I was working with a church that really wanted to have a vibrant Sunday school program, and yet they didn't have any young children. And actually, 3 churches within like a 3-block radius, the Methodists specifically, had a really vibrant program. And so it's something where you need to look to see, okay, are we creating a redundant program? Is this something that is part of who we are in our missional identity? And then we ask questions about, does your congregation have full, part-time, or paid clergy? And some sort of demographic questions that would help us best understand your context. Finally, what I ask you to do at the end of this is to provide your contact information. You are absolutely not required to give your name, your church organization name, and your email address. However, if you do, what you can expect is that within the next 24 hours, you will receive an email with a link of strategic thinking resources that are specifically tailored to your response. And so know that by filling this out, we will send you additional resources for your future use. All right, I'm going to pause here. Nick, are there any questions while I pull up the next section?
No questions have shown up in the chat, but we do have a new participant, Carolyn.
Well, hi, Carolyn. Okay, then I will move on to the next section. All right. So our next section then is leadership resources. Our leadership resources are primarily threefold. We have the Vestry Resource Guide, which is available in English and Spanish. It's a collaboration with Forward Movement, and it provides very helpful information on the role of the vestry, the visioning, finance, and leadership. And I recommend this to any parish's leadership in formative work. Then what we have online is ECF Vital Practices and Vestry Papers.
Aaron, I apologize to interrupt. We do have a question that came up from Larry.
Please. Hi, Larry.
Is consulting help fee-based?
For strategic solutions, it is fee-based. We seek to provide consulting based on a sliding scale based on affordability to pay. As a nonprofit, this is part of our mission, is that we seek to serve you at a cost that is affordable to you. And so that is certainly something that we could discuss. So Vital Practices and Vestry Papers is very much centered on congregational life. And it is a terrific resource I commend to you. Vestry Papers comes out once a month. This month is all around annual giving and wonderful ideas as to best practices and some stories of work in the field. Vital Posts is a blog site that's used both by congregational leaders as well as consultants. Nick has some good posts on there, and it's a great way to stay current with what's happening in the Episcopal Church. Also on there, you'll see a list of our webinars, and so this is a great place to go back and look at our previous webinars that you can absolutely access at no cost. Then we have Vital Teams, which is a curriculum that was developed by our leadership resource team. This is a way in which to create collaborative teams, both clergy and lay participants. What they do with this is that they have a curriculum that they walk through with you, and during the process you can learn best practices for any type of leading a meeting and creating goals together, as well as normative behaviors. I commend Vital Teams to you. They've got tools and resources, and if you want more information, please feel free to let us know. I'm happy to put you in sight with the program staff. Finally, Leadership Resources provides resources around webinars. They offer a church leadership conference every year at Cayuga in February. They have the Vital Teams Leadership Academy that they do every year. And then they also offer leadership workshops to dioceses. So if this was something that you were interested in for your own context, certainly you could identify that using ECF First Step. So let's look to see what that would look like. Okay. All right.
And Aaron, while you're doing that, I just wanted to let you know that there are not any questions that have come up yet.
Awesome. Sorry. I am getting it right now. My computer seemed to have frozen for a second. Let's see here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to quit. All right, and I'll come back. So with leadership resources, and if you were to click on it, we would ask, amongst the number of different options, are there concerns or are there challenging areas around vestry leadership, clergy leadership style, conflict among leadership, decision-making practices, recommended practices for leadership teams, volunteer recruitment practices, nomination and election processes, or creating group norms? And so if you were to click on leadership resources as part of the tool, then you would be asked to explain a bit more of the need. But here's where we start offering some real practical questions. Does your vestry or mission committee have established behavioral norms? Sometimes this is called a vestry covenant. Vestry covenants are something that I would absolutely recommend to every parish in having. Examples of established behavioral norms would be, do your vestry members know that you'll begin and end your vestry meetings on time? Are there back parking lot conversations? Is there an established method for communicating with one another? These are some good behavioral norms. Does your vestry or mission committee understand and embrace its purpose? Do you feel your congregation's lay and clergy leadership teams are effective? Is there unresolved conflict over leadership issues? This is a good question. Which response best describes the decision-making style of your congregation's leadership team? Strives to build consensus? Is it a more of a unilateral decision? Or is there another? Then we ask, does your congregation have a full-time, part-time, or not paid clergy person? And we recognize that different parishes are going to have different leadership resources. And so this is a large part of it. We are seeing many parishes come to us that might have part-time clergy, and so the volunteer leadership looks very different. Also playing into this is the parish's setting. Are you downtown or in the center of the city, or are you suburban? And so being able to name that for us will help us understand your context. This is also very, very important for all program areas. How would you describe your congregation? One predominant racial or ethnic group, one congregation, or maybe you have two or more racial or ethnic groups and congregations. Or maybe you have two or more racial groups that have formed one congregation. Understanding these dynamics are going to be very helpful. So at this point, I'd like to tell a quick story, which was I was leading a group at the Consortium of Endowed Episcopal Parishes on this when I had a rector come up to me who said, you know, I thought at the beginning of this what we would need would be strategic solutions. But actually, what I'm finding from listening to my own vestry is that what we really need are some leadership resources around this. which I thought was really quite wonderful. Using ECF First Step as a framework for your conversations then is that you can really begin to learn from one another. And oftentimes your perception is commonly held, but other times there might be information that you need in order to best understand your organization's overall wellness. All right. At this time, are there any questions about either strategic solutions or leadership resources? Okay, let's move on. So financial resources. I'd like to give a quick overview. Within every parish, there are 3 different types of giving that lead to healthy, vibrant financial wellness. The first is annual giving. This funds the everyday operations, and it comes typically from a donor's everyday cash flow, their monthly income, and is tied to the mission and ministry of the parish. Then you have capital funds. These are specific to projects, what we like to call extraordinary giving. This often will come from a donor's assets, and it's tied to future growth. This is where we say, what is God calling you to do, and then what are the projects necessary to complete these goals? And finally, there is planned giving. Planned giving funds future ministries. This is where a donor might give from their will or their estate plans, or they might make a life income gift, but it's tied to the continuation of your mission. Each of these ministries are very important to parishes, and I would highly recommend thinking about how to incorporate all 3 into a year-round model. So what we like to do is we like to talk about annual stewardship as annual giving, capital giving as extraordinary giving, and planned giving as end-of-life giving. So at ECF, we offer annual giving support. We have online tools and resources that we're happy to share, especially through our ECF Vital Practices. And as mentioned, both last month and this month's vestry papers was specifically on annual giving. We also provide consulting. And so if you are in need of extra support, this is where ECF certainly would be able to help walk alongside you with this and provide on-site support in developing and implementing your annual giving plans. Capital campaigns. This is where Nick and I first met one another. Capital campaigns is where you have a capital improvement project, whether it be increase the endowment or decrease debt or endow a particular programmatic staff role. Like, for example, I was working with a church in Hawaii that was considering endowing part of their choir director's role or choir and director's salary, or deferred maintenance or new capital improvement projects. So there are 5 different areas where capital campaigns can be of help. And so this is where ECF is able to provide on-site capital campaign work. And we walk through with a 3-phase methodology. First in discernment, then with feasibility study, and then with solicitation. Endowment management solutions. We have a very healthy endowment management fund. And ECF has helped hundreds of dioceses, churches, schools, and church-related organizations grow their endowment by providing oversight. ECF's commitment is to responsible management practices. And this is something that oftentimes we work with diocesan centers as well. And so if you are interested in this, this is something that we are certainly happy to help connect you with. And finally, planned giving. Planned giving is an important ministry in the life of your parish because it also encompasses people's end-of-life plans. It's where people consider what is a priority to them of their highest value. For example, when a person makes a gift to their church, they're elevating that church to the level of family. And so planned giving is an opportunity for a person's legacy to continue. We work with all different shapes and sizes of the Episcopal Church. We've worked with churches very small, 14 on a Sunday morning, and as large as a $12 million campaign. And so it's very important to be able to determine what is your financial resource need. And so to that end, let me pull up for you the financial resource component of the ECF Vital Practices. All right, so if you go to surveymonkey.com, all right, and we would fill this out. Here we go. So we're getting started, and we move and we identify financial resources. And under that, what falls parish finances, annual stewardship campaigns, realistic and understandable annual budgets, capital campaigns, planned giving programs, and endowment policies. We click on that, and here is where we ask you a good number of questions. After identifying your greatest challenge, we ask, how comfortable is your congregation with its present financial situation? Is your clergy leadership comfortable about speaking about money and stewardship from the pulpit? Is your clergy leadership comfortable speaking about it? Is an important question because it also helps us understand what the level of theological understanding around giving is at your parish. Fundraising in and of itself is not simply a means to an end. Rather, it's a ministry. It's a ministry where there's the opportunity for transformation, and making sure that there's this theology connected to giving is of vital importance. Our annual pledge is tracked, updated, and acknowledged. Our church finance is available and transparent to the congregation. This has been very important to recently, in light of oftentimes we see misuse of funds in different nonprofit organizations. Is leadership perceived to have financial integrity? Are there clear financial accounting procedures in place in the church office? Is there unresolved conflict over finances? Is there a plan and budget in place for routine facilities maintenance? We're seeing a lot of deferred maintenance capital campaigns, and so thinking about how to include maintenance in your ongoing operating budget is important to think about. Do you have deferred maintenance? Do you believe your buildings and grounds reflect your congregation's values to a visitor? So that's where in strategic solutions, when we were talking about what is your core identity, what are those central values, this is where you see these manifested in the buildings and grounds. If you identify hospitality as a core value, how do you see hospitality manifested in your building? Are there signs? Is it warm and inviting when you walk in? These are good questions. Does debt service challenge annual budget and programmatic needs? I was working with a parish once that had a 33% of their budget used for debt service and payment. And their vicar had to be moved from full-time to half-time. And so working together, we had to create a plan, a capital campaign plan to pay back that debt in order for them to live more fully into their mission. Does your congregation have any of the following? A building fund, endowment reserved funds, other designated funds, or planned giving program? And if not, we're happy to help provide free resources in these areas. If you have investments, is an outside entity helping you manage these funds? Do you have a vestry-approved gift acceptance policy in place to receive planned gifts? And here's where I chuckle, because I think Nick and I both could tell stories about parishes that have received gifts that were meant to be gifts perhaps, but ended up being much more of a liability. And so whether it be land that required a lot of upkeep, or an piece of art that perhaps was not as valued by the parish as it was by the donor, making sure you have a vestry-approved gift acceptance policy fits very nicely into a strategic filter. And then here, again, we ask some of the logistical pieces regarding your clergy's staff time, your parish setting, etc. Nick, are there any questions at this time?
Yes, there are two questions.
Okay, great.
The first one is from Carolyn, and it's, we have church updating and repairs in our near future. Do you have some help with ideas? To ask for special income for, say, painting the church.
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of a capital improvement plan, that is absolutely something that we're able to provide support. And actually, Nick could probably speak to this as well. Things like painting the church or things that you can readily see are often the most easiest to be fundraised for. Things that are like asbestos removal or a new boiler, those could be a bit more difficult, or an endowment campaign or debt retirement. Those require a lot of intentional thought and thinking about how you connect to your mission. But in the short term, you bet, those kinds of projects can absolutely be funded and very easily raised. I've seen parishes even break it down to the cost of buckets of paint and helping people think through that together.
All right. And then from Keith, he says, these are great questions. What happens? I think there was a little feedback with the noise at one point, Erin.
Oh, no.
And we
I'm
can
sorry.
look into that. And then his other question, is this primarily a tool for ECF to plan for future webinars and resources?
Keith, I hadn't thought about it, but yes, that would be a really great idea. I wouldn't say it's a primary value. What primarily we are seeing parishes use this for as a framework for discussions for prioritizing what's of the most important piece that they want to focus on. So for example, I had a church contact me today from Maryland where they needed to think about planned giving. They had deferred maintenance, but they hadn't updated their mission and identity for a while, and oh wait, annual giving has been low. So where do you begin, right? And so this tool is to help anyone trying to think through, all right, where do I best prioritize my resources? And then once you've prioritized those based on the questions, then it's a great way to be in contact with us and see if there are some pieces of information, extra help that we can give to you. So it's a way for us to get to know you, provide you with what we have free or pay for service, and to help us be able to determine our next steps together.
And Erin, he actually, there was a clarification, and I apologize for reading the question wrong. It was, what happens when we answer no to a question? It wasn't noise.
Oh, like
Sorry.
What happens if you fill out all no's in the financial section, like, no, we don't like fundraising and it's a terrible idea? Yeah, I get that. So what happens is that, first of all, you should know that these surveys are absolutely kept confidential on our end. And so while you are very free to share your answers, especially if you're taking them as a group with your parish, and I would highly welcome that you do, the information you provide goes directly to ECF and specifically actually to me. And it's my job then to review all of the answers the yeses and the nos. And then based on your responses, follow up with an email with a list of resources that are free and accessible, as well as opportunities for further engagement with ECF. Now, Mariana, you say, are these surveys used primarily for ECF when contacted with the congregation, or do congregations ever use them to begin conversations for the 3 types of giving? Oh my, that's great. So ECF, this First Step assessment tool, is located right now. It's free to you right on our website. You can access it tonight. And you can either fill it out electronically, and I'll get your responses, and I'll probably get back to you tomorrow, or you can print it out as a PDF and use it with your vestry. And then if you want to follow up with us, you can, and if you'd rather keep it for future reference, please feel free to do that. Now, if a congregation contacts us and says, like my Maryland client today says, God, then our staff is prepared to walk through the survey with you. Good. Well, great questions, guys. Keep them coming. Just to let you know, this is the link, and I've put both my email and the link up to the survey right here. Now, there was a 4th section that I noted, and that is the other category. And the other category might be something that you have concerned about, and you're not really sure where to go to. And we absolutely welcome those responses. And by clicking Other, then we ask you to describe your, well, actually, you know what I'll do? I'll show it to you. Why tell it to you when I can show it to you? Hold on one second here. Okay. So if we were to use the Other, for example, an Other category would be, say, your parish was in the midst of wanting to rethink liturgy. And we've had people contact us about that. Say you're trying to consider a new adapted liturgy specifically for a particular priority. What we would ask you to do then is to fill out this section and describe whatever the need is, whether it be liturgy or say you need auditing support. That's something that we don't provide, or legal services. These are things that would perhaps fall outside of strategic or leadership or financial. But we certainly want to hear from you. And part of what we're striving to do then is that if you fill out this section, and we have a resource, say, on ECF Vital Practice that would help you with this piece, then we would connect you with that. If, however, it's something that falls outside of what we provide, then we have a list of partners that we know are engaged in other areas of work that we're not engaged in, and we are very happy to help point you in the right direction. So if we can't help you, we'll do our very best to provide you with some ideas as to where you can go.
Aaron, Keith had another question. Do we assign one person to complete each section for the congregation, or would I ask the whole congregation to complete the SurveyMonkey to see if there is a difference in perception?
That's a great question. Where I've seen it done most effectively is to have the survey printed out and use it as a framework for discussion in, say, a vestry meeting. I know, for example, that January and February tend to be when you have vestry retreats coming up. This would be a great tool for that, and walking through it together and listening to different points of view as you determine what is a priority. Now, you are certainly most welcome to have one person complete the section as they see fit and then be in contact with us. We would love that. But it does seem to work well and at its best when it's a framework for small collaborative conversation. All right. We have just a few minutes left, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have on the tool. All right. So what I think of what feedback do we get from the SurveyMonkey? So what happens is when you fill out the form, I will receive all of your responses. And then from there, I follow up with you saying, oh, you've indicated that leadership resources, for example, is a priority to you. Based on your responses, it looks like the following links would be of help. So I might say under, say, financial resources, if you identified financial resources, I might say, okay, the basics of a capital campaign, how to develop a year-round stewardship program, then a new article out about fundraising during a time of election, and 5 best fundraising strategies in 2016, and I'd send them your way so that you would have those available. And then I would ask if you would like to meet with either myself or a particular program manager to talk through more fully what questions you have and if there are resources we can provide. All right. Looks like we have 2 folks that are typing. Absolutely. You can use the survey link right here that's found on the PowerPoint that I'll be sending out. Copy and paste and put it into your internet browser, and that will pull up the survey. It's also very much available on our ECF website. Oh, so fees only take place if there's a consulting service provided. So at no point, for example, when I'm emailing you resources, would you need to worry about fees. And if at any point there were fees to be considered, you would certainly be well forewarned before that were to even take place. Typically, that would be whenever there was a consulting contract engaged. But we do have a whole host of resources that are not fee-based, and I really want to commend that to you. All right. Thank you all so very much for your time this evening, and I want to say thank you to my colleague Nick. Very helpful. My email is right here, eweberjohnson@episcopalfoundation.org. If you have questions or if you have problems accessing the survey, I would be delighted to help you. If after our time tonight you have specific questions about your parish, please know that I am available to talk. And so I would love to set up a time for the 2 of us to talk by phone. But I'm very grateful for your work and the church in the world, and pray many blessings on your work. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.